When the machines went silent. The day everything stopped. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee when every machine on Earth stopped working. Not malfunctioned, stopped. Completely, instantly, simultaneously. Her smart coffee maker froze mid-brew. The holographic news display vanished. The automated building systems went silent. Outside her apartment window, vehicles drifted to gentle stops as their anti-gravity systems died. Emergency protocols caught them safely, but after that, nothing. Sarah stood frozen, coffee cup halfway to her lips, as the implications crashed over her. She was 42 years old, head of the Terraform engineering division, and she had just witnessed something impossible. Modern technology didn't just stop. Systems had redundancies, backups, fail-safes. A single device failing was rare. Everything failing at once? That violated every principle of distributed systems architecture. Her personal communicator was dead. Her computer was dead. Even the simple LED lights in her apartment were dark. Sarah went to her emergency kit, the old-fashioned one her grandfather had insisted she keep, and pulled out a hand-crank flashlight. It worked. Purely mechanical, no electronics. She looked at the ancient wind-up watch on her wrist. A gift from that same grandfather, a mechanical engineer who'd always said, "Never trust anything you can't fix with a wrench." The watch still ticked steadily. 8:47 a.m. Outside, the city was in chaos. People poured into the streets, confused and scared. Without electronic communication, rumors spread through the old-fashioned way, shouting. Some said it was a solar flare. Others claimed terrorist attack. A few religious groups declared it was the end times. Sarah knew better. This was too complete, too precise. Every electronic device on Earth failing at exactly the same moment suggested something far stranger. And far worse. The message in silence. It took 3 days for humanity to organize any kind of response. Without electronics, communication reverted to methods not used in centuries, written messages, signal flags, and actual human runners. Sarah found herself at an emergency government meeting in what used to be the old Capitol building, now used as a museum since modern governments met virtually. The room was packed with humanity's best minds, all equally confused. Scientists, engineers, military leaders, and government officials sat around actual paper maps and wrote with actual pens. It felt like stepping back in time. "We've tested everything," said Dr. James Park, a physicist Sarah knew from conferences. "The electromagnetic spectrum is normal. Radiation levels are baseline. There's no physical explanation for why this happened." "What about the silicon?" someone asked. Park nodded grimly. "That's the strange part. We examined failed devices under optical microscopes, since electron microscopes are down too. The silicon chips show no damage, no degradation. They should work. They just don't." Sarah raised her hand. "What about purely mechanical computers? The old analog machines?" "They work fine," Park confirmed. "Anything purely mechanical operates normally. But the moment you introduce semiconductors, transistors, any form of electronic logic, dead." A colonel from the military spoke up. "Can we rebuild? Start over with new components?" "We tried," Park said. "Made fresh silicon wafers using optical processes. Built new transistors from scratch. The moment we complete the circuit and apply power, nothing. It's like the universe simply decided that electronic computation doesn't work anymore." The room fell silent. Without electronics, modern civilization couldn't function. Food distribution required computers. Water treatment required automation. Medical equipment, transportation, communication, everything depended on technology that no longer worked. Sarah's mind raced. 3.5 billion people on Earth. Another 2 billion in orbital stations and moon bases. All of them suddenly cut off from the systems that sustained them. How long before the food riot started? Before the water ran out? Before people began dying? There has to be something, she said, standing up. Some solution. We're not going back to the Dark Ages. What do you suggest, Dr. Chen? The chairman asked. Sarah thought about her grandfather's workshop. The old mechanical computers he'd kept as curiosities. Differential analyzers, mechanical calculators, systems that performed computation through gears and levers instead of electrons. We go analog, she said. Purely mechanical systems. We can't make electronic computers, fine. But we can make mechanical ones. They'll be slower, bulkier, less powerful, but they'll work. That's insane, someone said. Mechanical computers? To run a civilization of 5 billion people? You have a better idea? Sarah challenged. Because right now, the alternative is watching humanity starve in the dark. Building from scratch. The transition was brutal. In the first month, 20 million people died, mostly in cities where food distribution collapsed before mechanical systems could be established. Orbital stations had it worse. Without electronic navigation, supply ships couldn't reach them. Emergency mechanical guidance systems were jury-rigged, but for many stations, help arrived too late. Sarah threw herself into the work with desperate intensity. She assembled teams of mechanical engineers, people who understood gears, levers, hydraulics, and pneumatics. Most were old, retired engineers who'd worked with mechanical systems before the electronic revolution. Together, they began designing the infrastructure to keep humanity alive. The first priority was food and water. Sarah's team created mechanical calculators to manage distribution logistics. Complex systems of gears and cams that could perform the basic arithmetic needed to track supplies and plan delivery routes. They were huge, a calculator that could have fit in someone's pocket now filled an entire room, but they worked. Next came communication. Without electronics, long-distance communication was impossible. Sarah's team designed mechanical relay systems, elaborate networks of towers with signal flags and mechanical semaphore arms. Messages could be transmitted across continents, though it took hours instead of milliseconds. Manufacturing was perhaps the hardest challenge. Modern fabrication relied entirely on computer-controlled systems. Sarah's solution was revolutionary in its simplicity. They went back to human workers guided by mechanical calculators. Production was slower, but it was production. 6 months after the collapse, Sarah stood in what they called the Central Computation Facility, a massive warehouse filled with mechanical computers. Thousands of brass gears spun in precisely choreographed patterns, performing the calculations needed to keep a reduced but functional civilization running. It's beautiful, in its own way, said Marcus Webb, her deputy. He was 65, one of the few engineers who still remembered working with mechanical systems. It's survival, Sarah replied. Nothing more. Marcus shook his head. No, Sarah. It's more than that. Look at what we've built in 6 months. A completely new technological infrastructure. Without the crisis, this knowledge would have been lost forever. Now every engineer on Earth knows how to build mechanical computation systems. That's not nothing. Sarah wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She'd been working 18-hour days for months. Her hands were covered in calluses from working with actual tools instead of commanding machines. Her back ached from hunching over drafting tables. But Marcus was right, they'd accomplished something remarkable. Have you heard the latest theory? Marcus asked. About why this happened? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Another one? Dr. Kim from Seoul thinks it might be intentional. Some kind of test. A test? By whom? Marcus shrugged. That's the question, isn't it? Who has the power to turn off electronics across an entire planet? Across the entire solar system, actually, the Mars colony reported the same thing. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She'd been so focused on survival that she hadn't thought about the bigger question, why had this happened? And what came next? That night, alone in her apartment lit by oil lamps, Sarah wrote in an actual paper journal, a habit she'd developed since computers stopped working. She wrote about the progress they'd made, the challenges remaining, and her fears about what was coming. But she also wrote about hope. Humanity had faced the impossible and adapted. They'd gone from complete technological collapse to a functioning civilization in just 6 months. If they could do that, what else were they capable of? Sarah set down her pen and looked out her window. The city glowed with firelight instead of electricity. It looked different, almost beautiful. Simpler, but not worse. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe this wasn't just survival. Maybe it was evolution. The next morning, everything changed again, the return signal. The message. Sarah woke to the sound of people shouting in the streets. For a terrible moment, she thought another crisis had hit, a food shortage, perhaps, or violence. But the voices sounded excited, not afraid. She dressed quickly and ran outside. People were gathered in the town square, pointing at something written on the central message board, a large mechanical display they used for public announcements. The message was simple, written in every human language simultaneously. Congratulations. You have passed the first trial. Prepare for contact. Sarah's blood ran cold. The first trial. So Marcus's theory had been right. This hadn't been a random catastrophe. It had been intentional. Within hours, emergency meetings were called. Every major settlement sent representatives to discuss the message. The debate was fierce. Some wanted to prepare for war. Clearly, someone with advanced technology had attacked Earth. Others argued for caution. If this entity could disable all electronics, what chance did humanity have in a fight? Sarah listened to the arguments with growing frustration. Finally, she stood up. We're asking the wrong questions. We shouldn't be debating whether to fight or hide. We should be asking, what did they want to see? Why give us a trial? Dr. Park leaned forward. What do you mean? Think about it, Sarah said. They could have destroyed us. Instead, they disabled our technology and watched. They wanted to see what we would do. And apparently, we did something right. But what? Someone asked. Sarah thought about the past 6 months. The desperate struggle to rebuild. The mechanical computers. The return to hands-on engineering. Maybe they wanted to see if we could survive without our technology. Or maybe. She paused, a new thought forming. Maybe they wanted to see if we understood our own technology. Really understood it, not just used it. The room fell silent as people considered this. Most species probably can't rebuild, Sarah continued. If you've relied on electronics for centuries, you forget how to build anything else. We only succeeded because we had people like Marcus who still remembered mechanical engineering. How many other civilizations would have that? So this was a test of technological depth, Park said slowly. Not just can you use technology, but can you create it from first principles? Exactly, Sarah said. And we passed. First contact. The visitors arrived 3 days later. Not with massive warships or intimidating displays of force, but with a single small craft that landed in an empty field outside what used to be New York City. Sarah was among the delegation chosen to make first contact. She stood with 50 other representatives of humanity, scientists, leaders, philosophers, and engineers, waiting as the craft's door opened. The aliens who emerged were nothing like Hollywood had imagined. They were tall and slender, with crystalline skin that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. Their faces were almost human, but with large eyes that held an ancient intelligence. The lead alien stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice bypassed their ears entirely, appearing directly in their minds. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Coordinator Zephyx of the Galactic Federation. You have completed the qualification trial. Sarah found her voice. You did this? Turned off our electronics? Yes, Zephyx confirmed. Every species that develops electronic computation faces the same test. Most fail. Fail how? Park asked. They die, Zephyx said simply. Unable to adapt, their civilizations collapse completely. Only species with true technological understanding survive. You are the 14th to pass in the last 1,000 years. Sarah felt anger rising. 20 million people died. You killed them to test us? Zephyx's colors shifted. Regret, Sarah somehow understood. We do not perform this test lightly. But the galaxy has learned hard lessons. Species that rely entirely on technology they don't understand become dangerous. They create weapons without comprehension, terraform planets without wisdom, and expand without control. So you judge us worthy of joining your federation? A diplomat asked. Not yet, Zephyx replied. The trial proves you have the foundation, true technological understanding. But you must choose. We can restore your electronics now. Return you to your previous technological level. Many species choose this. What's the alternative? Sarah asked. Zephyx's colors brightened. Continue as you are. Build your civilization on mechanical systems for another generation. Develop deeper understanding. When you're ready, we will teach you technologies beyond electronics, quantum computation, reality manipulation, dimensional engineering. But only if you prove you understand not just how to use tools, but how to create them. The delegation exchanged glances. The easy choice was obvious: get their old technology back, return to comfort and convenience. But Sarah thought about the past 6 months. The desperate struggle that had forced humanity to really understand their technology for the first time in generations. Can I ask a question? Sarah said. Why do you care? Why test us at all? Zephyx's colors became contemplative. Because the galaxy has seen what happens when species advance without wisdom. 3,000 years ago, a species called the architects developed incredible technology, matter replication, instant communication, automated everything. But they never understood it. When their core systems failed, they had no way to repair them. An entire civilization of trillions died because they'd forgotten how to build anything. The alien paused, letting that sink in. The Federation was formed by survivors, species that maintained their foundational knowledge even as they advanced. We test new species not to be cruel, but to save them from themselves. A civilization that can't rebuild from scratch is doomed to eventual extinction. Sarah looked at her fellow humans. She saw the same realization on their faces. This wasn't really a test. It was a gift, a forced lesson in technological self-sufficiency that might save humanity from future disaster. We need time to discuss this, the lead diplomat said. Of course, Zephyx agreed. We will return in 1 year for your answer. The choice. The debate consumed humanity for months. Sarah found herself at the center of it, arguing for the harder path, continuing with mechanical systems, earning their place in the Federation through genuine understanding rather than taking a shortcut. But people are suffering, opponents argued. We could end that suffering today by accepting the restoration. And what happens in another 1,000 years when something breaks? Sarah countered. Will we have the knowledge to fix it? Or will we be like the architects, helpless and dying? Public opinion swayed back and forth. Sarah gave speeches, wrote articles for the mechanical printing presses, and debated on the new mechanical television system, a remarkable invention that used spinning discs and mechanical scanning to transmit images. She argued that the past 6 months had been humanity's finest achievement, not because they'd suffered, but because they'd remembered how to truly engineer. They'd stopped being consumers of technology and become creators again. The vote was close, 54% chose to continue the mechanical path. It was enough. When Zephyx returned 1 year later, Sarah delivered the answer personally. We choose to continue. To build our civilization on understanding, not convenience. Zephyx's colors shimmered with approval. A wise choice. You will struggle for another generation. But your children's children will inherit a civilization that cannot be broken, because it's built by hands that know how to create. Will you help us? Sarah asked. We will observe and guide, Zephyx replied. When you're ready, when you've developed mechanical systems to their fullest potential, we will teach you what comes next. Technologies your ancestors never dreamed of. But first, you must master the foundations. The alien craft departed, leaving humanity to their mechanical civilization. Sarah stood watching it go, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. That evening, she returned to her apartment and her mechanical calculator, a beautiful brass device that filled her desk. She was working on designs for a mechanical quantum simulator, a machine that might bridge the gap between mechanical and quantum computation. It would take decades to build. Perhaps her entire lifetime. But that was fine. Because for the first time in human history, engineers weren't just using technology. They were understanding it, mastering it, creating it from first principles. Sarah pulled out her journal and wrote the final entry. We lost our electronics and gained something more valuable, the knowledge of how to build anything from nothing. We're not just survivors. We're engineers. Real engineers. And that makes all the difference. She set down her pen and smiled. Outside her window, the mechanical city hummed with 1,000 gears and levers, each one a testament to human ingenuity and determination. The galaxy had tested them. They'd passed. Now they would show the universe what human engineers could really do. The future was mechanical. And it was bright.